Professor Rensberg, the National Planning Commission has done a lot of work here. But again, just if you may sum up the findings of the NPC where the state of education in this country is concerned right this moment.
Good morning again, Kolani, and to all of the listeners. Sure. Perhaps just to focus then on the development plan leading up to 2030.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to recognize that there are several drivers of change that must be considered in the background before we even zoom in to the issue of education, skills, and so on. And I'll just note these. A shift or tilt from the west to the east, there must be consequences. A greater global interconnectivity and domestic interconnectivity, deepened globalization, climate change, enhanced use of technologies into the period leading up to 2030, and what we believe from the Planning Commission's point of view is a resurgence of Africa. All of these six drivers of change must cause us to reflect on what form of education, skills development we are looking at in the period of 2030. So let's leave that.
So those are macro issues.
Those are macro issues.
Yeah.
Quickly on demographic trends, we suggest that based on our own work that by 2030 we're looking at a population of 58.5 million. We expect fertility rates to decline. And importantly, by 2030, we expect 70% of our population to be urbanized. So a significant swing from rural to urbanization in the period ahead, with significant implications for how we provide, spatially now, education and skills. And then just one or two other matters. We've entered already our own demographic window with a large youth population. And then finally, in respect of demographic trends in the period leading up to 2030, 0 to 5-year-olds to increase by approximately 400,000, 6-year-olds to remain the same, but importantly, 7 to 17-year-olds will decline by about 500,000. So more or less a similar picture that we have now, except for the 7 to 17-year-olds declining. So let's zoom in on the three or four areas. So. Yeah. One area, early childhood development, just one issue I want to pick out from the various recommendations, and that is the challenge for us to expand the current provision of early childhood development from 1 year to 2 years. So we've got grade R at the moment as the first year, as 1 year of early childhood development, and the recommendation is that by 2030 we should have a second year in place to expand that availability over the period ahead. Turning to schools specifically, there are some important and often considered to be controversial recommendations in respect of the school sector. But let's begin firstly by making the point our challenge is to improve the quality of teaching in our schools. I think if there's one thing that South Africa is united about, it is that our investment in our school sector is not resulting in the return that we all expect it to yield in terms of maths and science output, in terms of our performance across the board from grade 3, grade 6, grade 9, right through to grade 12 across a range of subject areas. So I think we're all united that something needs to happen. And the reason why we're united is because we see that our neighboring nations are doing far better with far less investment in education, in particular in this case in schools. So let me zoom in on one of the big issues. We recommend strongly that teachers must be tested on a cyclical basis. Assess their knowledge and their competence, but importantly, provide them with development support. So it's pointless just doing the assessment without putting real substantive support in place. And I'm really keen to hear Mary's comment on that particular matter. The second difficult issue is that we put forward is to link teacher pay to learner performance. But taking into account the school environment, the infrastructure that's available, and the socioeconomic status of the community that's being served by those particular schools. Perhaps even more controversially, we're recommending recruit maths, science and technology and English language teachers from other English-speaking countries. This is how severe the issue is from the point of view of the Planning Commission. And then maybe to pause on, to allow perhaps the other colleagues to come in, to pause then on the second issue. The first issue is improve the quality of teaching in our schools, and a number of measures. I've just picked on some. Secondly, improve the quality of school leadership and management, which we see as a second critical issue.
Okay.
And maybe if I could just conclude there and